Alright, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. And what I've started to do is to go through some code examples for the textbook that we're using for the beginning Java programming class. So what I've done so far is I've gone over a simple example from Chapter 1 that I made up myself. It's a simple payroll example, and now I'm going to continue on with Chapter 2. So the first thing that I want to do, and I don't have to do it this way, but to me it's going to save me some time, the program I'm about to create is similar in nature to the Chapter 1 program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of that code from Chapter 1, and I'm just going to put it right here, and I'm going to grab all of it except the package statement, even though I could grab that too because I'm going to use the same package name. But I'm going to grab everything that's in here, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. Alright, then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to close this project up because I really shouldn't need it for anything else. And I'm going to create a new project. So remember what we did before. We go to File, New, Java Project, and we're going to call this Chapter 2. And there'll be two of these that we're going to create. So I'm going to call this Payroll 1. So it's Chapter02-Payroll 01. I click Finish. There's my project. Right mouse click on it. Choose New. Package. The package name will be the same every time for me. edu.blackhawk.jscott. And click Finish. Come down to the package area. Right mouse click. Choose New. Go to Class. And this will again be called Payroll. Now this time I don't need to have a main because I already have one in the file I'm going to copy in. It wouldn't hurt to put it there. But basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to grab all of this code. And I think I left the package statement there. But I'm going to grab all of this and just paste in what I had. Alright? So this has got me started. But let's talk about what we won't need now. Alright? We're going to use every bit of it. But what we're also going to have to do in here is rather than just saying gross equals this, and I don't want to hard code in these values anymore. So I'm going to say string equals, and I'm going to put double quote, which means the empty string. Oops. Alright, so double quote, 0, 0, and 0. I'm a little anal about this stuff, so I'm going to try to line stuff up a little bit, and it doesn't even look like it wants to, so that's fine. Alright. So now again, I've got all my variables initialized. As you can see, I've still got my gross pay, and I've still got my first name, etc. The problem is if I run this right now, nothing is set. So it's going to say a first name and then a blank, last name and then a blank, hours 0, rate 0, and since 0 times 0 is 0, it's going to say gross pay 0. And if you don't believe me, run. Let me save first. Run, and you can see it down at the bottom here. First name, there's nothing. Last name, there's nothing. Hours, rate, and gross pay. So that is not very helpful. But what I want to do in here is instead of hard coding values in, I want to be able to read in values. Alright, and the first way we're going to do this is we're going to read stuff in from the keyboard. And in order to do that, I need a keyboard object, which is an object of type scanner. Now I'm going to put this in the quote wrong way, unquote, and I'm going to get an error message. Don't let it throw you one way or the other because I'm going to show you how we can let the compiler fix our error for us. So I'm going to say scanner keyboard equals new scanner system.in. And what I'm saying is I'm going to use the keyboard for input in here. Now if you look, the word scanner has got red around it because the system doesn't know it thinks that I'm trying to create a new variable called scanner, or a new type, and I am, but really I'm trying to create one that exists already. So there's a fix in here. I can take my mouse and I can put it over the word scanner. And notice it says that one of the fixes is to import scanner.java.util. I'm going to do that and watch what happens up here when I do. It added this statement because that's where the scanner is defined in the Java API. So I didn't want to create it myself. I wanted to use an instance of it that was already created for me. So I told the system that. Notice it's not red anymore. It still is yellow because I have not yet, again, I have not yet used the variable. And I'm going to do that right now. Let's put a little white space in here. So now I can say system.out.print, and I'm going to give the user a message. I'm going to say, please input first name. Whoopsie. And I will actually do the inputting now. So I say first name equals keyboard dot next line, because that's how you read in string values. All right. So now I'm getting there. And the next one I want to read in is last name, which is almost the same thing as first name. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit and in here type in last name. Alright, so I've got those two done. I've got first name and last name, but I need hours and rate before I can calculate my gross pay. Again, it's similar, but it's not the same thing. But I will copy anyway here. So please enter hours worked. Where it's different is, of course, this has to be hours. But I can't say next line right now. I'm getting an error because it thinks that I'm trying to use it like a string. I have to say next double. All right. And it's not double, it's next double. There we go. And finally, I have to do one more. And that's hourly rate. And that's rate. All right. Believe it or not, the program is just about finished. I'm going to still print out stuff the way that I did before, but now I'm going to be getting input from the keyboard. Now you'll notice here that I still have a message because it says I never closed the keyboard. So really at the bottom of the program, I should tell it to close the keyboard. Keyboard.close. All right. And now there are no errors as I work my way through here. So let's run it, and then we'll come back and take a look at it line by line. So notice it now says, please input first name, Mary. Please input last name, Smith. Please input hours worked, 50. Please input hourly rate, 25. So I still get all of my information, but now every time I run it, I can conceivably put different values in there. So I can run it again. Let me clear this console. So I can do another run, and now I can put in information, Clark, Kent, 30, 20, and you get Clark's information. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Now one thing I want to do before I explain this is where we actually print out our information down here. I'm just going to put a couple \ns in so there's a little separation between the input and the output. So realize, what are we doing here? We're declaring and we're initializing our program variables. we're also declaring a variable here. So we're declaring keyboard variable. We don't have to call it keyboard. I could call it Jeff if I wanted to, but it wouldn't make much sense. I'm using it as input, and I'm using it for the keyboard. So I just called it what it was. So I'm going to input first name, last name, hours, and a rate. And that's what we're doing here. There's the input, so that please input first name is what showed on the screen. Then as soon as we put a value in, whatever value we put in became the first name. Then it asked for the same thing but for last name. Notice these are both keyboard next line. This is in your book and we did go over it a little bit, but those are the different things that you use. Alright, the next line is what's used for strings. On the other hand, hours worked and hourly rate are both doubles, so we use next double. The rest of the program is the same. Calculate gross pay, output all inputted and calculated info, and close the keyboard. Alright, one more time. I want to make sure I didn't break anything, so I'm going to clear my console and run it one last time. Run, run. Please input first name, Jeff. Please input last name, Scott. Hours worked, 100. Hourly rate, 5. There's my separation now. Jeff, Scott, 105, $500. So it appears to work just fine. Alright, so that's an example using keyboard. I should mention to you too, I figured out how to increase my font size. I was doing the right thing but in the wrong area. So to do it, I went over and I just right mouse clicked in my area here, went down to preferences, went to general, went to appearance, colors and fonts, but up near the top there was something that said text font. I went to edit, changed it accordingly to Verdana. I still don't even like the Verdana. I don't know what to use, what comes out the best. But you'll notice if I change it again, I'm sure whatever I change it to probably won't look much better. Let's try Arial Rounded MT. Okay, apply, okay, and you can see how it changed. That isn't real bad, so maybe we'll use that one for a bit. Alright, as I just did, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab everything. I won't need this scanner line, you'll see that in a minute, but I'll just grab everything from public here on down. We're going to write this one last time in here. So I'm going to copy this to the keyboard because again it'll be very similar in nature, but this time we're going to use message dialogues. Let me close this project. File, new, project. This one will be called Chapter02-Payroll 02. Clicking finish. There it's created. I'm going to right mouse click on my source folder, new package, edu.blackhawk.jscott, and hit enter, right mouse click, new class. Again, I'm going to just choose payroll, and again, it doesn't matter. I could put in of main, but I don't need to because I'm going to copy right over it anyway. So there that is, and I'm going to just copy this in. Now I don't need my keyboard anymore, so this keyboard close, I'm going to get rid of it. Alright, and I don't need the keyboard here either. Oops. So that's gone. Much of the stuff that's in here, I'm going to have to change these keyboard lines, but much of the stuff that's in here, again, I'm going to be able to use. I still want to declare excuse me, I still want to declare and initialize my program variables, and I'm doing it right here. And I still want to read in the values. All right, I've already got this written, so I'm searching for it here. There it is. This is actually, I think, going to be a little shorter program. Okay. But I'm going to need a new variable because I'm going to read everything into those input dialog box. So I'm going to create another variable here that I'm just going to call, I'll show you in a second, string input str for input string, and it's going to be equal to the empty string. And I'll just call this temporary input string. I am going to save all of the source code for all of these files that I'm creating, so you'll be able to go back and look at those if indeed you want to do that. Alright, so I still want to input all my stuff, but this is going to change as far as how I do it. So let me get rid of, to start with, I'm going to get rid of these two lines here. And it's got rid of course, the wrong one. So now, instead of saying first name equals keyboard.next line, I'm going to say first name equals J option pane dot show input dialog. Please input first name. All right. And the next one is going to be basically the exact same thing, so I'm going to copy it, and I just have to say last name equals that. So change first to last. Here and here. Alright. Okay, now, you may or may not have noticed this, probably you didn't unless you're looking at your own copy, but once I added this J option pane, notice what I got in here. The system did another import statement for us. It automatically imported in the file that it needs. I don't need the scanner anymore because I'm not using the scanner, but I need this. All right, because that allows me to use the option pane. All right. Now I'm going to comment out right now. I'm going to comment out this line, this line, this line, and this line, just so you can see so far what we've done. So I'm going to run the program now. Run. Now notice there's our new input. Please input your first name, Jeff. Please input your last name, Scott. All right, and now down at the bottom of the page, I have Jeff and Scott, but since I haven't done hours or rate yet, those values are still 0, which were their defaults. So I'm going to do a similar thing down here. Now, I can't just come in and do this. In fact, I'm going to get rid of all these lines I put in here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these. I cannot just come in and do this. I'm going to try it, but you're going to see the error I'm going to get. So I'm going to come in here and say hours. And I'm going to tell it, please input hours worked. And you'll notice it's all underlined because what it's saying is, hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. Hours is not a string. So that's illegal. And it says here you can convert it to a string. You don't want to do that because you don't want to use that as a string. You want to use that as a double. So what I have to do is I have to grab that temporary variable that we have that's called input string, and I'm going to say that that equals our hours worked. But then when I stick it into hours, I have to say hours equal double dot parse double input string. So now what we're saying here is grab whatever we just inputted right here, convert it to a double, and throw it into hours. Then I can do the same thing with rate. Okay. So let's take a look and see what it looks like right now. We're not done, but let's take a look at what we have so far. First name, Jeff. Last name, Scott. Hours worked, 40. Hourly rate, 20. And you'll notice down at the bottom here, Jeff, Scott, 40, 20, 800. So that worked. And we're going to keep that stuff down there. But I don't really like it just printing down on the bottom of the screen like that. So I want to output all that calculated info to screen, and then I'm going to have one more output statement in here. It's going to be pretty long. So I'm going to also say output all inputted and calculated info to dialog. If you say I don't know what that means, you're going to see it in just a minute. So I'm going to say, up here we used the J option pane show input dialog, but now we want to output. So I'm going to say J option pane dot show message dialog, and I spelled pane wrong there. So show message, message dialog. We need the word null there to center that on the screen. All right, and we'll say here first name plus first name plus \n for a new line. So we'll put each thing on its own line. All right, so this isn't correct yet, but we'll fix it in just a minute. And again, because I'm a little bit anal, I guess, about this, I like to line stuff up as much as I can to make it easier for me to see what's going on. Of course, it didn't work. So this will now be last name. And then we want hours worked. And then we want hourly rate. And then we want gross pay. Now here, if I do want $sign in here, I'll have to put it in there myself. So it's not going to be nicely formatted like what we saw before. Gross, and really I'm done, so I don't need any of that stuff at the end. All right. Now notice, gave me an error because I put the I in dialog. I made it a capital. So that should fix it. All right. We'll come back and look at it in just a minute, but let's save what we have and run it again and make sure that it still works. Mark, oops, well I spelled Mark wrong, but King worked 25 hours and makes $40 an hour. So notice what we have. Mark King, 25. Hourly rate is goofed up because I didn't change that to rate. All right, and gross pay still worked. So let's change this to rate, and let's run it again. So I'm going to clear out my console area here. I'm going to save, run it one more time. All right, now put my wife in. Sandy, Scott, how many hours worked? 100. How much money does she make? $25 an hour. So Sandy, Scott, 125, 2,500. That's what you see in there, and down at the bottom where we still printed it in, you can see it's a little bit nicer formatted. All right. So let me take this and collapse that way down, and let's take a look at the entire program then from start to finish as we finish up Chapter 2. In the previous example, we had to import java.util.scanner. Remember, what the import statement does is it goes out to the Java API and it finds that particular package and that particular class, and then it brings in everything directly under that class and under the J option pane class and makes it available to our program. We need that because that particular API right there, that holds show input dialog and it holds show message dialog. So that's why we need this. This was the exact same stuff that we had before, except we needed a temporary string variable to read non-string values into. The first two worked just fine. We didn't need that input string because these are string values. Remember, when you input anything into a dialog, the system expects that what you're inputting is a string. Since first name and last name are strings, worked just fine the way it was. The other two variables, hours and rate, they're both of type double, as you can see right here. So we can't read them in directly. You saw the error that came up when I tried to do that. So instead, we used our temporary variable, read the value of hours worked into the temporary variable, then converted it into a double and put it into hours. Then we did the same exact thing. We used our temporary variable, we used an input dialog, and then we took that temporary variable and again converted it to a double and put it into rate. Then the rest was just the same. Gross is hours times rate. We kept our same stuff at the bottom of our console even though we didn't have to. But then I showed you both. So that's it in the console. And this showed it to the dialog box. You may have noticed too, if I take my mouse and I put it over this, for example, what happens is there is built-in help inside of Eclipse, and it'll show you information here. And this stuff is all hyperlinked, so if I did want to, I could click on this stuff. I'm not going to do that, but I could. So sometimes when you want to learn things, the best thing to do is to just take your mouse and put it over this and start taking a look. So if you don't know what some of that stuff means. Alright, that ends everything for Chapter 2, so when I come back I'm going to go over the book information in Chapter 3, and in Chapter 3 the author goes over how to use an if statement, and I think that's what I put in here. So what I added into this particular example was if you work any overtime, you're going to get overtime payments. So if your hours were greater than 40, you're going to get time and a half for everything over 40. So I'll come back to talk about what was in the book and then give the example in just a few minutes.